Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon from Malaysia. We are back to our webinars after a long interval. Thank you for bearing with us while we were unable to continue these sessions. And welcome to the today's webinar on preparation and delivery of interactive lectures. Here are the learning outcomes of this session. By the end of this session, the participants would be able to explain the concept, rationale of an interactive lecture, describe the structure of an interactive lecture, explain the constructivism theory of learning, apply the theory of constructivism in preparation and delivery of interactive lectures, describe the learning styles in adults, and apply the adult learning styles in preparation and delivery of interactive lectures. So these are a few learning outcomes which inshallah we will achieve during this session. First, the problem statement, and here is the problem statement. Do students fall asleep during your lecture? How do you deal with this problem? How to address this issue? What time of the day is the best time to deliver lecture to students? And this is the question which I posed in the survey in last week. And let me share the results with you. The question, as I mentioned earlier, was what time of the day is the best to deliver a lecture to students? We got 346 responses till this morning from 15 countries. And here is the list of the countries from where we got the responses written in alphabetical order. And these were the results. So nearly 80% of the respondents think that early morning is the best time to deliver lecture to the students. Another, let's say, 9% around, say, the late morning. However, we do realize that even in early morning lecture, there are few students who will doze off during the lectures and during these sessions. So to look for the solution to this problem, another question: do you think a well-designed lecture can spark interest and deepen students' understanding of the material in your course? And we will see the answer during this discussion. First, let's look at the teaching methods available to us. And the teaching methods can be divided into two groups: the teacher-directed and student-directed. The student-directed methods include project-based learning, problem-based learning, inquiry-based learning, collaborative learning, case-based learning, scenario-based learning, and discussion-based learning. Whereas teacher-directed are mainly lectures, including the interactive lectures. Now, here is an important concept which I want to describe here. Teaching methods are chosen to accomplish specific objectives and outcomes. So this means that the teaching method should match with the learning outcomes which we want to achieve. And to explain this statement, teaching methods are not universally more or less effective. They are more or less appropriate for the learning outcomes, the students' needs, and the different learning environment. This means that one type teaching method may not be effective in all the situations and for all the learning outcomes. So we look at the teaching methods, whether they are appropriate for the learning outcomes which we want to achieve, the student's needs, and the different learning environment. Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. Let's think about it. How does it apply to a teaching session? The traditional lectures can be dull, boring, repetitive. They are meant to transfer the information rather than application of the information. Passive learning leads to forgotten concepts, and goals are not often achieved. What we want to tell versus what students want to know. And there is hardly any opportunity to get a feedback, timely and useful. So with that background, let's answer this question: what is an interactive lecture? Interactive lectures are teaching sessions in which the lecturer breaks the lecture at least once per class to have all of the students participate in an activity that lets them work directly with the material being taught. These activities allow students to apply what they have learned earlier or give them a context for upcoming lecture material. So the hallmark of an interactive lecture is a break during the lecture, during which all of the students are involved in an activity which is related to the topic being taught. I will go into a bit more detail in the subsequent slides. Interactive lectures include at least one opportunity for students to interact actively and directly with the material through a specific learning task. This means that during that break, a specific learning task is given to the students with the intention that students will relate more precisely with the topic being taught. These learning tasks can be brief segments within a larger lecture-based class period and can include a single technique being used repeatedly or a mix of several different ones. This means that the specific task can vary in different sessions, not necessarily the same method being used repeatedly. Interactive lecture is different than the formal lecture. It involves the participants in the discussion as much as possible. Lecture is broken into short segments separated by activities or assessments. Students work together in small groups, and formative assessments may be used during the class to evaluate students' learning progress. The activities can take on many forms, but they are important in that they allow students to use materials learned in the class and contribute to their own learning. Let's look at some examples. In a mathematics class, the lecturer teaches a formula and then asks students to solve a problem by using that formula. In medicine, for example, after teaching the actions of insulin, students can be asked to express their views what would happen to the metabolism of carbohydrate in the absence of insulin. Our students are taught the functions of thyroxine and then are asked to list down the symptoms which they think may appear in patients in the absence of thyroxine. In this way, the activities are included and that improves the understanding of the topic. Teacher presents information for 10 to 15 minutes and then stops for 2 to 3 minutes or more. During this few minutes break or a wait time, students take on an active role and are involved in an activity. And there could be various forms of these activities: pair and compare, pair, compare and ask, or recall of information and compare with the other students, or discussion and answering the open-ended question. These are few examples. It is recommended to use the 20-minute attention span as a rule of thumb. In a 50-minute class, use one change-up in the middle, and in a 75-minute class, use two change-ups at roughly 1/3 and 2/3 of the way through the class period. However, don't follow this slavishly, as anything that becomes predictable will have less impact. The strategies used in interactive lectures include active review and summary, integrated quizzes, assessment-based learning, participant control, teamwork, and debriefing. Having understood what is meant by an interactive lecture, so next question is why we should use interactive lectures. Interactive lectures can increase students' engagement with the course material and facilitate learning. By using interactive lectures, the students are more likely to assume responsibility for their own learning. By changing pace and incorporating a variety of techniques that arouse attention, interactive lectures can stimulate interest and help to maintain attention. By encouraging applications to real-life situations or focusing on controversial issues, interactive lectures may motivate students to read and learn more, as controversial issues would stimulate the debate. So interactive lectures promote deep learning, foster student engagement and accountability, promote students' retention and learning of the material presented during the lecture, give students practice in developing critical thinking, enable lecturers to assess how well the class is learning that day, and help lecturers to improve their teaching skills. So these are few benefits or justification for using interactive lectures during our teaching sessions. Let's understand the role of learning theories in interactive lectures. We will spend few minutes on this topic. It would enhance teaching if teachers know how does the process of learning takes place, or how information is processed before it becomes knowledge. Information is defined as collection of data, whereas knowledge is the understanding and application of that data. And learning theories answer these questions. These theories describe how learning takes place in a specific context, or in other words, how teaching should take place in a specific context. The four major learning theories are behaviorism, cognitivism, social learning theory, and constructivism. Constructivism theory covers most of the aspects of behaviorism, cognitivism, and social learning theories, and therefore we will concentrate on this learning theory only. According to constructivism theory, learning is a constructive process. Learner takes new information and builds it onto the existing knowledge. For example, learner knows the cardiac cycle and then applies this knowledge to understand and explain changes in cardiac cycle that can happen in a child with VSD. Now we are already, let's say, about 15 to 20 minutes in the lecture. Some of you might be feeling sleepy or losing interest. So according to the interactive lecture, this is the time that we should introduce an activity. To bring in this activity, can you think of, based on the presentation so far, what kind of activity may be included in this session? The one suggestion could be knowing that learner takes new information and builds it onto existing knowledge. So question can be put, how constructivism concept can be used to begin an interactive lecture? And the participants may be asked to think about it and come up with relevant answers. Application of constructivism in a teaching session. As we mentioned earlier, learning is a constructive process. Learner takes new information and builds it onto an existing knowledge. Now, this is important point here. The cognitive structures which the learner builds are influenced by the structure and organization of the information being received. This means that we have to plan our presentation very carefully, keeping in mind the structure and organization which we are going to use in our teaching session is going to influence the students' information and knowledge. So according to this theory, we can plan the teaching learning session in three interrelated parts. First is schema activation. Second, schema building. And third, schema refinement. Schema activation refers to the process of bringing previously learned information to mind in order to make connections with the new information. This means that we activate the previously learned information and knowledge before we present the new information. In a teaching context, this could involve activating prior knowledge that is relevant to the topic being taught. Schema building refers to the process of constructing new knowledge or understanding based on the existing knowledge. And in a teaching context, this could involve building new schemas or mental frameworks to help students understand and organize new information. We would be going into a bit detail in the subsequent slides about these aspects. Schema refinement refers to the process of revising or updating existing schemas based on new information or experiences. In a teaching context, this could involve helping students revise and update their understanding of a topic as they learn more about it. Now I will go into a bit detail of each of these schemas and their application. For schema activation, we should plan the session carefully, be aware and address the learning outcomes, and activate the relevant existing knowledge, which can be done by, for example, asking questions based on the previous presentations, or we can summarize the previous lecture or session, or we can show and share some pictures and videos which are related to the topic we are going to discuss, so that students can relate and they already start thinking about what is going to be discussed. If we are starting a brand new topic, a first session, where there is no previous session held, we can relate an incident, a news, a personal experience to connect students with the topic or the subject. The subsequent sessions, we can begin with the connection to what we have covered previously in relation to the present topic. Grab your students' attention right from the start with a provocative question or a personal anecdote, and place the topic explicitly with where it fits in the overall course. For schema building, information should be presented in a structured and organized manner. A logical sequence should be followed, as understanding of a new concept may depend upon the prior understanding of the previous concept. Information should be linked to what is already known and mention the ways in which this might be useful in future applications. For example, body produces antibodies to the antigens of the infecting viruses, which may produce antigen-antibody complexes. Taking this concept, can we attach the antiviral drugs to these antibodies to specifically attack the infecting viruses? So in this way, a critical thinking session can be initiated. To maintain the interest during the schema building, do not forget the students are adults too. Go slow. Give time to students to assimilate. Write less, talk more. Use pictures, drawings, multimedia to get students' attention. Give real life examples and ask the students, how would you deal with such a situation? Continuing with schema building, teach the concepts rather than the facts, because facts students can retrieve easily from number of resources available to them. Share your experiences. How did you understand the same concept when you were learning it first time? Encourage students to ask the questions. Include light moments in the discussion. Ask students to share their experiences, and to assess the understanding of the students during schema building, can give a quiz. Assess the application of knowledge. For example, after teaching anatomy of biliary tract and bile flow, we can ask question, what will happen if there is an obstruction? So students can apply the information or knowledge they have gained during that session. I have given this example previously also, that after teaching the functions of insulin, what could be the metabolic consequences in case of lack of insulin? Or we can apply what is called the 2-minute test. And the question is asked, what is the most important thing you have learned in this session? And what would you like to learn more about this topic? To keep the students attentive during the schema building, respect the students' views and do not humiliate. Invite questions and ask other students to answer before you answer that question yourself. Play a game or take a 5-minute break. Now coming to the schema refinement, which is the last part, A clear summary is provided at the end of the session, and that helps students to re-examine and refine their concepts and address the possible doubts or points where the students were found to be struggling. So that would be the schema refinement component of an interactive lecture. Here is a checklist which lecturers can use about their teaching session. Plan of the session, was it clearly outlined? Outcomes, were they clearly identified? Content, was it appropriate, focused? Delivery, did the delivery address most of the learning styles, which we will be talking in a short while? Use of media, instructional material designs and their application, was it appropriate? And whether outcomes were achieved and take-home message was delivered. We can use this checklist for our sessions and can improve in the subsequent sessions. So lecturer's role in constructivism. First, design instructions so that learner has opportunities to solve realistic and meaningful problems. Provide group learning activities to allow learners to interact and solve problems. And take a guiding and coaching approach to help the students. The instructional methods that can be used following constructivism can be case studies, problem-based learning, case-based learning, or task-based learning, presenting multiple perspectives and guided reflection, mentoring or apprenticeships, collaborative learning, discovery learning, and using stimulators or simulators. These are few methods where we can use the theory of constructivism while teaching the students. That was the first part, how we can use the theory of constructivism in our teaching session. The next component is about the learning styles and interactive lectures. The three most cited learning styles in adults are visual learners who prefer images, pictures, diagrams, films, and videos or demonstrations. Auditory learners who learn best through the process of listening and talking. Kinesthetic learners who learn best by doing. The most of the students are visual learners, followed by auditory learners, and then the kinesthetic learners. There is another style being recommended by certain authors, which is writing, that some students learn best by writing notes. So at this stage, our second activity in this session, think about your own learning style. Based on the definitions given so far, can you identify your own learning style? The visual learners perform better by looking at simple, easy to process images, pictures, and graphs. Teaching tips for visual learners include use worksheets, whiteboards, PowerPoint presentations, flip charts, pictures, and videos, and frequently check in with adult visual learners by asking them if they see how something works. Show the learning object completely and clearly. Show the technique or model from a number of different angles and encourage students to move around and find the best viewing angles. Do not force students to stay in a fixed line while you demonstrate some procedure. Here is a very simple example of teaching the lobes of the brain to the visual learners by giving it different colors. The auditory learners, from music to rhythm to rhymes, the sound of lesson best teach this type of learners. And the teaching tips include speak clearly, ask questions, and invite feedback. Encourage active participation from auditory learners by involving them in class discussions and asking them how something sounds to them. Let students arrange themselves around you for instruction where they can listen best. Let students ask questions when they want to. Don't wait till the end of the session. Speak clearly and completely. Give complete instructions. Ask questions yourself. Ask to read the text aloud and use verbal analogies, storytelling, and mnemonics. The third type, the kinesthetic type of learners, to be able to understand a concept, the kinesthetic learners must learn by doing. They normally skip over the written instructions and instead work a problem out using a hands-on approach. The tips include provide frequent breaks to avoid kinesthetic learners from becoming easily distracted. Include learning activities that invite exploration, role-playing, gaming, and physical activities. So to engage these students, give space to feel or touch the particular details of what is happening. Give practical hands-on activities. Ask to draw, design, or construct. Mix theory with practical. Let them move around and engage in projects. Now, how to engage all the students with all these three different learning styles in a classroom? Here is an interesting observation or a concept. Children are eager to soak up knowledge and continue learning from every situation they see, hear, and do. On the other hand, adults are much quicker to prevent future learning from happening once they think they fully understand the subject or activity. So adults, when they think that they have understood the concept, then they just stop learning anymore. We might have seen frequently that when somebody wants to ask question, we do not allow them to complete the question because we have understood the question and we ask just, I know, yes, I would like to answer that. So keep this thing in mind while we are trying to engage our adult learners with different learning styles. Project positivity, encouragement, and patience throughout your teaching. Always recognize the positive contributions that adult learners make. Set clear expectations of coursework or course learning outcomes, while also demonstrating its usefulness in solving real-world problems. Always display respect and communicate with encouragement and a positive tone. Provide opportunities for critical reflection when teaching new concepts. Ask students to give examples based on the concept taught, because that is a very good way of understanding whether students have understood that concept. To understand the learning styles of learners, conduct a short learning style assessment at the beginning of your course. These questions are easily available on the internet. And based on these findings, plan coursework for your learners that will increase the likelihood of successful course completion. In summary, knowing how students learn our learning theories help us to improve our teaching methods. Constructivism covers most of the aspects of behaviorism, cognitivism, and social learning theory. Schema activation helps to link the new information with the previous knowledge and skills. Schema building requires the information to be presented in a sequential and logical manner. Schema refinement helps to clarify the concepts and remove doubts in understanding. Address different learning styles and intelligences in your presentation. Some tips: begin with the provocative question and end with the provocative question. So students should leave the classroom with something to work on. Begin and end on time. Try video taping yourself to learn about your delivery and lecture style. Vary the types of lectures you give, interactive, case studies, and demonstration, etc. Here are different suggestions. Storytelling. Discuss the main concept and have students come up with a personal example. Non-linear presentation, which usually works in small groups. Presentations that organically flow from topic to topic based on the audience's feedback and is a great way to engage participants. Polls, surveys, and quizzes. Get a fast reaction from students using polls, survey, and quizzes. Games. Add a small game into a presentation breakup, the normal lecture format, and gets the audience to think critically. And then discussions and group breakout sessions. Open discussions or breakout sessions can help students learn from each other, share insights, and have an opportunity to ask questions. With that, I end my presentation, and I will be happy to answer if you have any questions. Yes. Yes, Muhammad Aslam, please unmute yourself. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. After a long time,
Yes, sir.
we were deprived of your inspirations. First of all, is a comment. It is, in my experience, that in constructivism of a good delivery of knowledge through a lecture, in the content, the teacher has to make a fine combination of 3 C's. That is content, concept, and context. So a fine combination or a merger of the content, context, and the concept has to be made for a better understanding of the students. That is my question. Now, these days, students don't fall asleep in the classroom, but some of them, they continue to play with the mobile because there are much more attractive items in the mobile than in any form of the lecturing. How to minimize this menace of using mobile phones in the classrooms, please?
Can I ask the other participants to give their views? Do you want your students to use mobile phone in your class? Any ideas? Yes, Dr. Fahad. Yes, Dr. Fahad.
I also face the same problem, but now what I've come up with is that I just allow them to, because most of them are taking notes, most of them are reading different presentations, previous topics. So I just allow them. I just allow them to switch on their devices, laptops, iPads, etc., and it doesn't matter to me anymore.
Right. So that is one view. Dr. Fahad allows his students to use their mobile phone or other devices during the session. Yeah, Professor Rashid.
Thank you very much for excellent presentation. Sir, although our administration does not allow, but I do allow because we have got a large class of 100 students. And
Right.
when we see that there are two options, either student will use mobile or they will start talking.
Right.
So talking and disturbing the class, and
Yeah.
as compared to that, it is much better to let them use the mobile.
So that they don't disturb others.
Yes.
Yes. Dr. Sajida, please.
Ji, sir. Thank you, sir. I would agree with Dr. Fahad that nowadays students are many a times taking notes, and in order to stop them from actually diverting into other activities with the mobile, the only thing that I find is make the students put them through challenges throughout the session, give them some questions, quizzes, thought-provoking questions. That is the only way one can actually keep them focused on the lecture while taking their notes on these apps also. That's the only.
Right. Actually, I do what Dr. Sajida and Dr. Fahad mentioned, especially in small groups. And, at times I give them the question that, okay, look, can you find out the definition of this term? Can you find out the criteria for this particular diagnosis? So I use this opportunity because they are and when you ask, for example, if you ask them why you are using the mobile phone, they would say that they are actually looking at the aspects about the topic which we are talking. So I think we should use this opportunity on the positive side. And few times in a session, I would ask them to search the information from the net and then share with the rest of the class. And sometimes I even ask them to help me because I need to get some information which I cannot recall at that moment, and ask the students to search and share with the class. So that's one. And actually what Prof. Rashid said is a very interesting concept, that at least they are not disturbing others. And the third is, this is what common about the lectures. You may be physically there, but mentally you may not be there. So that doesn't actually make any difference. Yeah, Dr. Hema. Dr. Hema.
Yes,
Yes.
good afternoon, sir. This is Dr. Hemangini, and I'm from Goa Medical College.
Ji.
So, what I tend to do in my class, if I could share, is
Right.
I ask the students to use the mobile. Then I use some measures like Answer Garden, where I pose a question and they all put in their responses, and we develop a word cloud. Like
Right.
for doctors and violence, I had asked them what, according to you, is the most contributory factor to these incidences of violence amongst doctors these days. So then they all put in their thing, and then we come to kind of a consensus that, okay, this, according to them, is what is coming up as a, answer. Or I tend to use a poll. So that is also very helpful to just get a direct opinion about what they want, is the correct answer according to them. And from there, I tend to discuss further. This is just one example.
Right. I think that's a very interesting point. Initially, when I wanted to use these polls and games in my class, I thought it is very childish kind of approach, and my adult student wouldn't like it. But to my surprise, when I used it, the students were so delighted to use these polls and the
Absolutely,
games.
sir. Yeah.
and
They
I
felt
really got
included.
their full attention. However, if we keep on using the same poll or same method repeatedly, that becomes boring. So we might have to
Obviously, yeah, it has to
change
be
from
varied
one
in
to
every
another,
class.
because
Obviously, yes, sir.
we have number of these polls and the games available, so we can keep on changing. Professor Ahmad, sir, Professor Ahmad Mashwani, yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum assalam.
Again, about the same issue of this mobile in the class.
Sir,
Generally, there is a group of students.
Sir, your voice is breaking. Cannot understand.
Sir, I am just having a comment about the use of mobile in the class by students.
I'm sorry. Your voice is breaking. Cannot understand. Can we ask Dr. Aisha Zahir, please?
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum assalam.
Hope you're well, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, what I do in the class is that I usually, depending upon the type of class, usually set the class rules in the beginning, and
Right.
I just give 1 or 2 minutes to the class saying that I want this from you in this class.
Right.
And in that, I tell them that please do not use your mobile phones and just switch, because some of them are using purposely, and some of them, their phones, they just ring and they pick them up and start doing. So I usually
Right.
tell them just switch off your mobiles and put them away, not in
Right.
front of you, if we don't need it. But if they have to see, and if they have books in them and they want to use it, sometimes in the small groups they're allowed to use. But
Right.
usually in the large classrooms and lecture theaters, usually I ask them to switch them off pre-hand, just a few minutes in the beginning, and tell them I want this, and this from you. So
All right.
95% of them, they comply. 5% don't, I just leave them.
So yeah, that's another approach. Yes. Dr. Amir, please.
Assalamu alaikum, Prof.
Walaikum assalam, sir.
Prof, just want to ask, sometimes in interactive session, we ask some questions to the students, and we expect them, they would answer the question
Right.
from a critical thinking. But rather than some students, what they do, they use the mobile and Google the question. Is it correct?
Okay. Rather than thinking themselves, they just get the information from other sources and present. This is what you are saying.
Exactly. That's what I'm asking, actually.
Right. So let's say Professor Aslam, what do you think about that, sir? Would you allow students to pick up the answer from the other resources and use that, or you would ask them to give their own opinion?
Right. No, this is the biggest disadvantage of the present learning system and examination systems, that an MCQ, it curbs the process of thinking until unless the MCQs has been made very meticulously from that point of view.
Right.
In our days, when there were long essay questions, there were many bad things, but there is a good thing that students used to put in thinking process, and they could evolve their own hypotheses and concepts where it may be wrong, but at least it could stimulate the thinking process. I would think the answer to your question would be, it depends on the types of the students, whether they are nursing or primary school or high school or middle learning or intermediate learning or higher learning students, and which type of delivery is going to be made to them. So in some case, yes, and others too, but depends on the type of the class and type and the learning objectives from them.
Right. Sir, I think it also depends on the type of question.
Yes, that is true.
If you are asking the simple fact or some number, then it's okay if, to my opinion, if it's just a number or some fact, and if student look at the material, that should be okay. But when you are asking the opinions, when you asking the let's say discussion, then I think I would encourage students to come up with their own views, with the assurance, that even if your answer is not ideal, not right, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because we are promoting critical thinking, and in that there is no right or wrong answer. So my opinion would be based on the type of question. Dr. Ratnadeep.
Hello, sir. This
Yes,
is
sir.
yeah. I really like the all the programs. I mean to say, the specifically the schema activation, schema building, and schema refinement is quite nice. I just wanted to say that yeah, we have been also using the mobiles in the classes. We are actually allowing the students to do that, because if we talk about regarding the large group teaching, so these mobile apps are the only ones where we can becoming interactive. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult to become interactive, as you have mentioned. I have just 2 questions on your presentation. You have mentioned about the pairing portion. So I just wanted to know that how effective this pairing could be within a stipulated period of time of 50 minutes of class, for example, if it is a large group session. This is the first question. And the second question is, you have mentioned also that what do you mean by participants' control in the large group teaching? So I'm afraid that if you give the participants some kind of control, how you could maintain the time limit, because this is also very important to finish it up within 15 minutes.
That's right. Those 2 very important. I think I will address this, but let me ask there are a couple of hands here. Let me ask their opinion, and then we will come back to this.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Okay, this is IV08. Says that, I'm sorry, I don't know the name, but the hand has been shown in IV08. Please unmute yourself. IV08, please unmute yourself. Okay, Dr. Fahad, please. Dr. Fahad, you want to say?
Sir. So initially, yes, sir. So initially, I said, as I said earlier, that I don't mind them opening their laptops and tablets, etc. But sir, if at times I really want them not to use their cell phones, what I do is I tend to become a bit over smart, and I share my presentation on their mobile screen. So I use some software such as Pole EV, etc. So they can only, there is no presentation in the class on multimedia, and their slides are changing on their laptops or their screen. So this kind of forces them to look at the screen, but I use it very rarely when I really want them not to use some other websites or information sources during the lecture and focus on the presentation.
Do you mean, Dr. Fahad, that you do not project your slides? That you are seeing your slide on your computer?
Yes, at times
and students are seeing those slides on their handphone, and there is no projection.
Yes, sir.
I think that's a clever way of engaging the students. Yeah, so that's another approach. For example, I actually share my slides with the students before the lecture, maybe 24 hours before the lecture, so that now, although that may not be trend, at one time students used to just copy the slides. They do not listen what you are saying. They just are trying to copy the slides. So to avoid that, we share the slides with them. However, we make sure that our slides do not have paragraphs, just points only. So because otherwise students use your presentation as a resource and alternative to textbooks. Right now, Dr. Abida Shaheen. Dr. Abida Shaheen.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir, for your excellent talk. So, well, about the use of technology and the use of mobile in classroom, first of all, I am a big advocate of using digital technology as an adjunct learning resource. And I have no problem if students are using mobile during the learning session, because I know the generation I am dealing with, they are different kind of learners. Whether they are auditory learners, they are visual learners, they are getting all their information by any mean besides kinesthetic means. They are getting all their information if they have any specific kind of learning style. But normally what I do in my session, I quickly gauge that how many students they are engaged actively with their mobiles. So normally, you know that the study guides are the learning objectives, and we have lots of WhatsApp official group, and we share our learning objectives beforehand our session.
Right.
So what I do, that I quickly gauge them, and I say that, okay, so what learning objectives are we going to cover in this session? Because I shared these learning objectives on your Google Classroom or Moodle or Google Classroom or in the WhatsApp official group. So please tell me about the learning objectives. So that's a kind of deterrent that I encourage them that you please use your mobile, but this time we are using for some learning activity.
Right.
And what I do, that all type of quizzes or assessment which I normally do during my session, to break the monotony, I always use Google Forms. What free resources are available? For instance, there are gamification tools in which there is limited access, only 40 students. Normally, we have strength of 100 students in our class.
Right.
So I can't use those free resources. But the Google Forms, G Suites, they are available with almost all institutes after COVID.
Right.
So I use the free resources, and all the assessments I do it in online forms. So that is the way of encouraging that I'm not depriving them of their gadgets. They can use their mobile, but in this class, we will use only for the learning purposes.
Right.
So this strategy normally I adapt for my learning sessions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you see, I agree with you on that point that we have to use the modern technology and we have to go along with the modern times. In fact, that is for us to unlearn and relearn. Dr. Jisma, please. Dr. Jisma.
السلام عليكم
Yes.
ورحمة الله وبركاته. جزاك الله خيرا, Prof, for very nice and informative session. I have two questions. The first one regarding learning styles. Yani, how you can use the 3 different styles in one lecture? Or it's depend on topic of that lecture. The second question is about also use of mobile by student during session. If they use mobile for learning, it's okay. But sometimes some students, they use it to play or chatting or... So you think it's okay, yani like this student, if I keep their phone with me till the end of that day as a punishment, or what I can do?
Okay, coming to the learning styles, I think I'm collecting these questions because the previously questions have also been asked, so I'll address that before the other people finish their discussion. So now to find a student who is playing a game on the phone and then you take up their phone and keep with you till the end of the class. That may be one way of warning the students that they should not do it in future. But in a large class, it might not be possible to see who is playing and who is actually using the phone with some purpose. As I said earlier, even if they are not using the handphone or mobile phone, they are just sitting in the class and their minds are somewhere else. So that we would never know that. Dr. Hussam, please.
Assalamu alaikum, bro.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Thank you for your nice presentation. We really need this session badly. Personally, for the case of using technology and mobile phone, and I agree about what Dr. Abaida just now said. We have to use the technology. It's very good. And we have to direct the students, okay? Don't leave them freely. How can we do that? Because some students sometimes maybe they need to understand some terms, some language things, so they need some kind of books, you know, any other things to understand while you say something during the lecture. But actually, let me stop about one point here. Why should the student use a mobile? That means you are boring. The lecture is boring. That's why they so in the session of you, that's something wrong. You have to search where is your weak point. I have one student already sent me a feedback, very strange. He asked me, please don't use color, don't use diagrams, don't use the video or anything. He wants the lecture like a textbook. Just textbook. And after that, I need to go and investigate with him slowly. I find him, actually, he's in the first year of medical student, so it means he just come from secondary school to the university. I find him, he's still at the baby stage of learning. He still cannot depend on himself and adapt to the new kind of going from one phase to one phase. So we have to focus that one. So what I mean is, it must be something that make a boring. So you have to fix that point, and you direct the student, even yourself. You ask them, open and see. Give a question, give a quiz, and ask them. No, it is an open book. Open your phone or search Google. Ask Uncle Google. No problem. I want them. Why? Because there are many of them making a mistake. Always when we give them a task or homework, whatever, they will all go to Google and bring whatever they don't know how to pick up, even from the good source, medical source. They bring you from different kind of non-medical writers, and they bring.
Dr. Hussam, if I may summarize, your first point is very interesting. So our lecture or our style has to compete with whatever students are using to make our lecture more interesting than what game they are playing. The other is, yes, I think open book concept is very useful, but for that purpose, our question should be not straightforward kind of information which student can straight away look for that. Because the basic principle under open book is that student have to really look for that answer from number of sources before coming to an answer. Dr. Matia, please. Yes, unmute yourself, please. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Thank you so much for your excellent presentation. So my question is, actually, it's my observation from the lecture classes that if any item is there, for example, the anatomy items, maximum students are absent in that classes, or they may bring those lecture sheet or books and sit on the last benches and read those topics. So, sir, how we can prevent this type of their habit?
I think Dr. Hussam has already mentioned that we have to make our lectures, our sessions interesting and useful in the eyes of the students. And because if our lectures are giving only the facts, only the figures, that would be very boring for students because they can find it from so many sources. The one thing which nobody else can do except you is sharing your experience. How did you deal with such situation yourself as a student and as a teacher? Only you know, and sharing those kind of experiences in my view and experience is really gets the attention of the student because they cannot find that point of view anywhere else except from you. So that may be the one way. Dr. Nasreen Jahan, please.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam.
Sir, one more thing we can add. We can take the names of the student and make them feel important. They are important in the class and make them understand what we want to tell them so that they can concentrate on our class. That is one of my way to gain attention of the student.
Sorry, sorry, can you say it again, please?
So, I remember the names of the students, and I often when I feel they are not showing interest in the class, I will call out the names and make them important. Feel important. They are important for the class.
Right. Yeah. So that's
how I make them feel interest in my class.
Yeah. Right. That's really a technique which has been used all the time, that a student who you find is distracted, you just call and maybe ask a question or a comment. Yes. Dr. Nasrallah, please. Dr. Nasrallah.
Good morning. Hello, Professor Alam Malik.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
I'm from Libya. Yes, if you might. Well, first of all, I thank you a lot, Professor, for this kind presentation. And I'm an associated professor at Faculty of Medicine, Department of Surgery.
Right.
I found competency learning education meantime, it's important to engage more students, to interact in the lecture, by meaning of sharing the ideas, critical thinking, reasoning, everything. So I'm not sure that 100% of a student will be at a class in any given time. So the synchronous and non-synchronous learning, it come on to overcome this absence and sharing. So we'll found the mobile or the technology through mobile presentation interactive sessions is important for a student, even though he is in a class or out class, should share either synchronous or asynchronous, as a recorded lecture can be listen and interact later on through this quiz, assignment, whatever. It's okay. This such activities should be. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, at present times, the asynchronous means that if you record your lecture and then you keep it in a place where that is accessible to students at different times, is another way. Okay, quickly, Dr. Nasreen Jahan, please. Okay, Dr. Ritvija. Dr. Ritvija, please.
Hello. Thank you for such a nice interaction. Sir, actually what I do for few of my lecture in my previous institute, that I used to use paper models to explain, like for example, I've explained hemoglobin structure. And I prepared very basic paper models to engage students. Like I made red color paper caps to show iron moiety and hemoglobin moiety. And then I engaged almost 12 or 16 students to make that model on stage. So
Right.
almost all of them are engaged, and for whole year, students kept on mentioning that lecture. Although
Right.
I have put much effort in other lecture also, and when I left the college, they just all of them mentioned that lecture, that play they had played, and
Right.
thanked me to explain hemoglobin structure in a very simple and engaging way. So even if we not include this kind of thing in every lecture, but at least for those things we can try and explain them inhibition or stimulation while
Yeah.
making them part of lecture rather than just showing them slides and filling them with facts and information.
Yeah, I think again a very interesting idea. So, some of the students might be attracted to attend such sessions where such activities are taking place. Okay, the last one, Dr. S.H. Wakar, please.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum salam.
Very briefly, I would like to say something. Lecture hall is mostly known as lecture theater, and you know the theater. If you performer is very good, the audience will be engaged with him. So
Right.
teacher should be enthusiastic, and interest is always brought by the teacher into the class. So
Right.
if a teacher makes the lecture interesting, and very rightly, as you said, if we use the constructivism model in preparing the lecture, and then the student will be engaged. Whether they use a mobile, they don't use it, whether they sleep into the class, it is the performer on the stage who performs, and the audience is engaged with him. And lastly, a bit of behaviorist approach is needed in the undergraduate class. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Interestingly, I wrote an article saying that lecture is a performing art. So when you are delivering a lecture, it is actually a performing art. And many people would say that apart from the content, the major component in the teaching session is the way you perform it. Now, let me come to the couple of questions which were asked. One is about the pairing in constructivism. Basically, is, for example, you float a question and then you ask the students to, let's say, discuss with the other student on their right or left and come up with an answer. That is the pairing means during the activity, but it can be more than two students as well. Regarding the question about the control, control here means is only those 4 or 5 minutes during the activity when students are doing that activity. So they are doing it and they have the control over that time. That doesn't mean that they control the whole session. Regarding the question on learning styles, that how to address all 3 or 4 learning styles in one session. Now, as you see the figure, nearly 65% are students are visual learners. So that makes our basis of the delivering the lecture. At the same time, we can use, let's say, some recorded materials and some activities to let's say kinesthetic students are about 5%. And basically you can get the real figures of your students by using a questionnaire and analyzing. So if I think I have few slides on that there are different methods to keep all the 3 learning styles engaged in a session. You may like to go through that again, and we will be sharing the video recording of this session as well. Right now, coming towards an end, I have a couple of slides to share. Please bear with me. Now, one is that we are going to start a new activity. which is conducting the workshops online. And I'm collaborating with Peshawar Medical College in Pakistan. They will be doing the secretarial work, and the certificate would be issued from that institution. And first such session would be on 17th of September. And the topic would be the preparation and delivery of a team-based learning session. So this would be nearly 3-hour workshops. And I will be sharing the relevant information with you on this platform. And the last but not the least, my usual request to each participant to donate $1 or equivalent amount in your local currency to any deserving individual in your neighborhood or any public welfare organization in your community after attending every webinar. With that, I thank you for your attendance and patience and cooperation, and hopefully we'll see you soon, inshallah.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. I will share and everybody for wonderful session.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Wa alaikum assalam. We will be sharing the video recording of this session soon, inshallah.
So kind.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.